In this lesson, we are going to look at the human digestive system. So, up to date, we have looked at how cells make up tissues, how tissues make up organs, how organs make up systems, and how organ systems make up an organism. Now we're going to focus on the human digestive system. So, in the previous lesson, we looked at the different organs involved in digestion, and there was a quick brief overview of the location and position of many of these organs. In this lesson, we are going to describe the pathway taken by food in the digestive system, and then we'll be looking at the adaptations of the key organs involved, and we are going to focus on the stomach and the small intestine in a bit more fine detail. Let us now define digestion. Now, digestion is simply the breakdown of food from large molecules to small molecules. So, before we put a sentence down, let's put a few points explaining what digestion is. First point is digestion can be thought of as the breakdown, so breaking down food from larger molecules to small molecules. Or let's put from large molecules to smaller molecules. So, in essence, in a nutshell, digestion is the breaking down of food from large molecules to smaller molecules. And the absorption, and the final point here is the absorption, so let's put this in another bullet point, the absorption of these molecules. So we are breaking down the food from large molecules to small molecules, and these smaller molecules have to be absorbed, and this completes the digestive process. Now, how is food broken from large molecules to smaller molecules for absorption to take place? To answer this question, we need to first understand that digestion can be categorized or put into two types of groups. First one is mechanical digestion. Mechanical digestion. And the second one is called chemical digestion. So we've got mechanical digestion and chemical digestion. I want you to pause the video here and just give me an example of what you think mechanical digestion is, or give me an example of where it takes place in the human body. And then I want you to give me an example of chemical digestion. Think about what I mean by chemical digestion. Can you think of any place in the body where chemical digestion would take place? So just pause the video here and jot down an answer for mechanical digestion and chemical digestion. Just an example of each, an example of where you think mechanical digestion occurs, and an example of where chemical digestion would occur. Okay, so you should have, or you may have, the teeth here. So the teeth, when you chew food, you use your teeth to break down the food into smaller pieces. So that's an example of breaking down food, because if we go back to the first sentence, digestion is the breaking down of food, and this occurs with the teeth. So the initial point of mechanically chewing your food is mechanical digestion, is example of mechanical digestion. Another example you may have put down is the stomach. So those of you who've put down the stomach, this is an example because the stomach is involved in churning the food, and it does this via certain muscles, specialized muscles that churn the food. So examples of mechanical digestion: teeth and stomach. Chemical digestion. So chemical digestion, you may have enzymes here. So enzymes are proteins. These are chemicals that we're going to look in more detail when it comes to chemical digestion regarding different types of enzymes that break down small food molecules or long chains of molecules into smaller ones that allow for absorption to happen. So we have mechanical digestion and chemical digestion. To distinguish between the two, we can think of mechanical digestion as breaking down large food items into smaller manageable, let's say not molecules but smaller manageable components, which are chemically digested by enzymes into smaller molecules. So mechanical digestion is breaking down of food into smaller pieces, and this allows for chemical digestion to occur by breaking down those smaller pieces into smaller molecules, which are easier to absorb by the body. Now, a note on this: chemical digestion does not occur further down the digestive process. It starts to occur right at the beginning. So just keep a note of this, and I'm going to go through this in a bit more detail, but just keep a note that chemical digestion does not happen many steps after mechanical digestion, i.e. when you start chewing your food. Chemical digestion occurs right from the outset of when we consume food, and this will be important when we look at the various enzymes that are involved in digestion. In terms of mechanical digestion, I just want you to quickly familiarize yourself with the mouth in terms of how it's involved in mechanical digestion. You should be aware from key stage 3 that you have different types of teeth: canines, incisors, premolars and molars. And each individual type of tooth has a specific function in terms of breaking down the food into smaller sections. So you have mechanical digestion from the teeth as shown here. But you also have salivary glands that secrete a certain type of enzyme, which results in chemical digestion. So in the mouth you have both mechanical digestion and chemical digestion. So both are occurring in the mouth, and the tongue is also needed for digestion in the mouth because it again mixes the food around and works in conjunction with the teeth and the salivary glands to make sure that the process of digestion starts. The process of digestion when it occurs in the mouth. So when food is first consumed, we are going to look at mechanical digestion and chemical digestion occurring in the mouth. Notice how the teeth break down the food, and the tongue and the salivary glands, how they also are important for the process of breaking down the food. And you can see here that the salivary glands will secrete a specific enzyme, amylase, and the tongue and the teeth are used to break down the food into smaller sections, and then this is passed down to the esophagus, and via peristalsis the food is transported to the stomach. I'm going to now summarize digestion in 7 steps, and in your notes I want you to leave a couple of lines gap between each step. So when you come to look over your notes, it's clear as to where the steps of digestion are occurring and the organs that are involved. Okay, first step, can you put the subheading mouth? Okay, so this here involves the action of the teeth. So we're going to look at the teeth. The tongue. And we've got the salivary glands. So the teeth, the tongue, and the salivary glands are the three components that work together to start the process of digestion in the mouth. And here you have mechanical digestion, specifically from the teeth, and you also have chemical digestion. Okay, and chemical digestion, secretion of enzymes, so via enzyme amylase. Okay, now just be aware, anytime you have a chemical which ends in ASE, you are invariably dealing with an enzyme. And the chemical here is amylase, and it digests carbohydrates. It starts the process of digesting carbohydrates. So in your notes, could you also put next to amylase, starts breaking down carbohydrates? Is the esophagus, or it is also known as the gullet. Now, the esophagus or gullet is responsible for connecting the mouth to the stomach, and essentially it transports, so the esophagus or gullet transports food to the stomach. Okay, and in the process of transporting the swallowed food to the stomach, it also lubricates the food. And via a mechanism of contraction and relaxation of certain specific type of muscles within the esophagus, the food gets passed down in a particular manner to the stomach. So esophagus or gullet transports food to the stomach, and this is done by a specific mechanism, by a specific specialized set of muscle cells or muscle layer that is transporting the food to the stomach. That mechanism in action, known as peristalsis, the food is being moved through the digestive tract via the contraction and relaxation of specialized muscle tissue. So you don't have to take the diagram down, but can you just put down that the esophagus, via the action of contraction and relaxation of muscles, passes the food to the stomach? And could you note down the name given to this process as well? Swallowing the food once it's been chewed in the mouth and the saliva has worked on it and the tongue has also manipulated the food in a certain way, allowing it to be swallowed. Now, once the food is swallowed, that process of swallowing is also an important process because it separates two passageways. It separates the trachea and the esophagus, and this is important because, as you see here, once the food is being swallowed, the epiglottis here, it separates the trachea from the esophagus. And this is important because if this separation was not here, you would have the choking reflex would kick into action. And this is also how choking occurs if food actually gets round the epiglottis and into the trachea, the windpipe. So you can see here, as you swallow, the epiglottis closes off the windpipe, preventing food going in there. If it does go in there, then you have this coughing reflex that you're seeing here occurring to expel the food. We are looking at the stomach. Now, as in the mouth, we also have two types of digestion occurring here. We have mechanical and chemical digestion taking place. So we have mechanical digestion. Mechanical digestion happening where the stomach will churn via muscular walls, will churn the food around. So mechanical digestion, churning of food. Churning of food via muscular walls. So this is one important function of the stomach. It is to churn the food via muscular walls, and this aids in the process of breaking down the food that was swallowed from the mouth. Second part, in terms of digestion, is the chemical digestion component. And this is where a specific enzyme now, known as protease, will break down protein. So can you write down? This is where protease, it's an enzyme, will break down proteins. So I'll repeat again. Protease, a specific enzyme, breaks down proteins. Okay, so you've got, and that's your chemical digestion component. So in terms of breaking down food, the stomach has two functions. One, there is mechanical digestion, and two, there is chemical digestion. So this is in terms of breaking the food down. Now the stomach also has another important function, and this is to kill any bacteria or any harmful pathogen microorganisms that may have entered with the food. And the way the stomach does this is by having a significant concentration of hydrochloric acid. So could you put down kills bacteria via hydrochloric acid. HCl. The hydrochloric acid found within the stomach. If we have hydrochloric acid in the stomach, that means the pH value of the stomach is going to be of a low value. And please note that the hydrochloric acid is essential to kill harmful bacteria that may have been ingested when consuming the food. So to summarize again, you have mechanical digestion and chemical digestion, and also the presence of hydrochloric acid in the stomach to kill harmful bacteria. Is the liver. The liver has many functions, and when we talk about digestion, we are looking at the role of the liver in breaking down lipids or fats. So the way the liver does this is by producing bile. So the liver produces bile. Okay, and the production of bile will convert fats into tiny droplets. So large globular fat molecules will be turned into tiny droplets of fat. So produces bile to help convert large fat molecules into tiny droplets. So the liver produces bile to help convert large fat molecules into tiny droplets. So it breaks down large globular fat molecules into tiny droplets. Now this process has a specific name. It's called emulsification. So this process of breaking down large fat molecules into smaller tiny droplets is known as emulsification. So can you just put down that underneath the sentence? Can you put down this is known as emulsification? The breaking down of large globular fat molecules into tiny droplets via the action of bile, which is produced by the liver. This is looking at the pancreas. The pancreas is a glandular organ and it secretes three main enzymes that are vital for digestion to occur. So can you just put down pancreas? It's made up of glandular tissue. Okay, but it is an organ. It's one of the organs of the digestive system. It's one of the main organs, but made up of glandular tissue. And the reason I'm stressing this point of glandular is because that gives you an indication that it's going to secrete certain chemicals into the bloodstream. So we've got glandular here, and it's involved in can you put down it produces and secretes three main enzymes vital for digestion. So it produces and secretes three main enzymes vital for digestion, and I want you to label it 1, 2 and 3 because you will need to know the name of the enzyme and what the enzyme actually breaks down. So the first one is protease. And if you remember back to our previous steps, protease was also used in the stomach to break down proteins, and it's the same action here. Protease used to break down proteins. Breaks down protein. Okay, that's number one. Number two is carbohydrates. Carbohydrates, and this breaks down carbohydrates. So breaks down carbohydrates. Okay, and the third enzyme is lipase, or some people say lipase, but lipase, and this breaks down lipids. i.e. fats. Now, what I want you to take note of, each enzyme, you can see here, and I mentioned this before when we talked about amylase, it's another type of enzyme that breaks down a specific type of carbohydrate. Here you have each enzyme is ending in ASE. So when you see a chemical, or let's say a name given in the exam, and it is ending in ASE, this is indicating to you that this is an enzyme. And when we come onto the lock and key theory, you're going to have to be familiar with enzyme action, the different types of enzymes that are found in the human body, and also how to identify enzymes as well. So here we can identify enzymes by the name, and if the chemical is ending in ASE, we are dealing with an enzyme. Now be careful when you're looking at carbohydrates, breaking down carbohydrates. Okay, so carbohydrates breaks down carbohydrates. The words look very similar, but they are two different things here. Carbohydrates is the enzyme, carbohydrates is what is broken down. Here the food is absorbed into the bloodstream, so the small soluble food molecules now are absorbed into the bloodstream. So can you just write down here where small soluble food molecules are absorbed into the bloodstream. Now this is important because when you start to consume food, it's not always in a soluble format, and this is why we have different mechanisms to break down the food, either mechanical or chemical, to make it into something that's smaller and soluble, so that the food is in a format that is easily absorbed into the bloodstream. This is the whole process of digestion, and this is why we have different mechanisms and different chemicals working on the food that we consume to make sure that the food is in a format which is smaller and soluble, so that these molecules are easily absorbed into the bloodstream. Now this absorption is happening at the small intestine. Now what's important to note here is that the small intestine is adapted in a specific way for this absorption to occur. This is because the small intestine is covered in finger-like projections known as villi. So can you put down villi, finger-like projections, help to absorb food into the bloodstream. Now these villi are found on the inner surface of the small intestine, and it is from here that the smaller soluble food molecules, which have been broken down by the action of enzymes, are then subsequently absorbed into the bloodstream. So these food molecules are absorbed into the bloodstream via the finger-like projections known as villi, which are found in the small intestine. Digestive system in a quick overview of the pathway taken by food. I'm going to quickly give a brief description of where the food is going through the digestive system, and then I'll pause the video at certain points to give a bit more detail. So if we look here, we can see the food entering the stomach. It's been churned, it's been broken down, and then it enters to the small intestine, where the microvilli, finger-like projections, will work on the food and absorb more nutrients into the bloodstream. And if we look closely here at the microvilli, we can see that there's a large amount of blood supply. The surface area of the small intestine has been increased to maximize the absorption. And once the food passes from the small intestine, it goes into the large intestine, where water is reabsorbed and then waste is eliminated. Happening near the gut wall, and you can see here how the nutrients are being taken into the bloodstream, the various nutrients that are being taken into the bloodstream, and you can see the location of each particular organ, from the small intestine to the large intestine, from inside the gut to the bloodstream, and then to the body cells. So you can add to your notes by just making a note of how the nutrients are passing. If we closely look at each section, so we're looking at the stomach here. So this is the stomach. You're seeing where the food has entered into the stomach. It is churned, and hydrochloric acid is also secreted into this mixture where the food is held in the stomach to kill any harmful bacteria. And also protease enzymes will start to work on the proteins and start breaking down the proteins there. Next, the food is moved towards the small intestine, and here you can see the finger-like projections clearly. And what you need to understand about these finger-like projections, the villi, is that they increase the surface area of the small intestine at where absorption will occur. So the efficiency of absorption is maximized because of the presence of these villi, the finger-like projections. They increase the surface area at which absorption occurs. So you can see there are thousands, hundreds of thousands of these finger-like projections, and these are the microvilli. These are the villi. And you can see that the food is passed in a passageway that it's coming into contact with these microvilli, and this is how the nutrients are absorbed from the food here. And looking closer into the villi, you can see here that another important point about the villi is that they have a large blood supply, and this ensures that the nutrients are absorbed into the bloodstream in an efficient manner, quickly as possible. If the villi did not have a large blood supply, the transport of the nutrients from the small intestine into the bloodstream and to be redistributed to the rest of the body would not be efficient. So another adaptation is that these finger-like projections also increase the blood supply to the small intestine, so that you're increasing the efficiency the rate at which the nutrients are absorbed into the bloodstream, because each finger-like projection has the blood supply going through it in this way, as you can see. And notice that inside the villi, you can see that the red blood cells are here. And you can see that the nutrients are being absorbed into the bloodstream And you can see this is the bloodstream here because you should be able to identify the red blood cells because of their biconcave shape, their specific shape here. And here you have the large intestine, and where water is being reabsorbed, absorbed from the actual food, the remnants of the food that has been passed into the large intestine. Water is being absorbed from there, and you can see that the color is also changing, and then this is eliminated as waste. Of the villi and how they are involved in absorption of the nutrients. So here's a quick summary again of the villi. We've looked at the villi in terms of how it's actually located within the small intestine. This is a sample section of villi showing you the where the blood supply is located within the villi, inside the villi, how the villi are arranged, and how the absorption is taking place. So there are 3 points here. They have a thin outer layer of cells, they have a good blood supply, they provide large surface area for absorption. Quick summary of the 3 key enzymes that you need to know for your exam: amylase, protease, and lipase. Here I've quickly put down what the products are when these enzymes work on their specific substrate. So you've got here amylase. It works on starch and it gives you sugars. So when you break down starch, you get a sugar. Protease breaks down proteins into amino acids. Lipase breaks down lipids into fatty acids and glycerol. Can you quickly make a note of the products of each of the products from the enzyme activity for each one? Okay, and notice what the substrate is, what the enzyme is working on. Amylase is working on starch, giving sugar. Protease is working on proteins, giving amino acids. Lipase is working on lipids, giving fatty acids and glycerol. So can you just pause the video here and quickly make a note of what the enzyme is working on and what the products are of the enzyme. So for example, this is what the enzyme works on and this is the product. So could you just make sure in your notes that you have this written down somewhere? Okay, now also I want you to make a note of the location of each of these enzymes. So amylase can be found in the mouth. It is also secreted by the pancreas and the small intestine. Okay, so that's for amylase. Protease is secreted by the stomach. Pancreas and small intestine. When we break down lipids, we break them down by lipase, and the lipase enzyme can be found secreted by the small intestine the pancreas. So it's the small intestine and the pancreas where it is secreted from, and they are produced in the small intestine and the pancreas. Now, when I talked about amylase, I put down it is in the mouth, But just be aware, you have the salivary glands that are in the mouth that actually secrete the enzyme amylase. So can you just take a note of the enzyme name, the substrate it works on, the product's form, and the location of each of these enzymes, i.e. where they are produced and secreted from. Of the organs involved in digestion, and you can see a quick breakdown of the enzymes, where they're secreted, and what the function of each organ as well. So pause the video here, add to your notes in terms of what is being secreted at each organ and in terms of conditions for the enzyme to work also. So this is a quick summary breakdown of the organs involved in digestion with conditions for the enzymes to work as well. Ask, can you match the letter to the correct corresponding number? So just pause the video here, and on a piece of paper I would like you to match the corresponding number with the letter. So A is the liver. What is the correct corresponding number? So just pause the video here, and could you make a note of your answer? Alright, A is the liver, so the corresponding answer is producing bile, so it is 3. B is the stomach. Here we are churning the food, breaking it down further, so you could have chosen any one of 1 or 4 because they are essentially the same. However, if you are looking at 1 and 4, you would have to differentiate further. Even though you are breaking down large insoluble molecules into smaller soluble molecules, when we're dealing with the stomach, no absorption is taking place. So the correct answer for B would be 4. Breaking down large insoluble molecules into smaller soluble molecules. No absorption takes place in the stomach. That happens in the small intestine. So the correct answer for C would be 1. So remember to read the question carefully, and what corresponding labels, remember to read them carefully as well and look at the key words. Absorption happens only in the small intestine. Now, D, you have the large intestine, and this is absorbing water from undigested food. So D would be 2. So just give yourself a mark out of 4 for this quick question. Can you now answer these exam questions? So can you go through these exam questions and pause the video here, and can you jot down the answers on a piece of paper? And there's no need to write the questions out, just write in full sentences where you need to, and if you need to match words to other words, just write down the words side by side. Okay, so let's look at the first question. What is organ A? Organ A, you should have that this is the stomach. What is organ B? Organ B is the small intestine. It says digestive enzymes. Now question B, digestive enzymes are made by different organs in the digestive system. We have to complete the table by putting a tick or a cross in the corresponding boxes. So here, lipase, it's not produced in the salivary glands. It's not produced in the stomach. It is produced in the pancreas, and it is produced in the small intestine. Protease is not produced in the salivary glands. It is produced in the stomach. It is produced by the pancreas, and it is produced by the small intestine. It says here, the stomach also makes hydrochloric acid. How does the acid help digestion? And you have to be careful here, because here it's asking you for digestion. Now, we haven't gone over here the conditions for enzyme activity. We're going to come on to enzyme activity later on, enzyme lock and key theory and optimal conditions. So if you had put down that the hydrochloric acid is important for killing bacteria or harmful bacteria, you would not get the mark here. So this is a harder question, which we haven't covered fully the theory in terms of optimal enzyme conditions. So even though it's a good question just to look at, the answer to this one is that hydrochloric acid gives optimal pH condition for protease enzyme to work. Now, I included this question here because I wanted you to just see how questions can come about. Now, your examiner in the mark scheme, it's saying ignore any reference to killing of harmful bacteria. Now, the reason is because they are specifically, in the question itself, they are looking for digestion, i.e. the breaking down of large food molecules into smaller food molecules. The killing of bacteria is important because it stops food poisoning occurring and harm coming to our body. And there have been questions asked in the past, what is another function of hydrochloric acid, or why, give 2 reasons why hydrochloric acid is important in the stomach. But here the specific question is to do with how does the acid help digestion. So you have to know clearly that digestion is the breaking down of food. So it's to do with enzyme activity. Protease is an enzyme that breaks down proteins and it's secreted in the stomach. So the examiner is asking you to look at enzyme activity. And as I said, we're going to come on to this. So this will just be something that you can remember when we go on to enzyme activity about optimum conditions. So this was a bit of a harder question, but I wanted to put it here just for you to be aware of how exam questions can be a bit tricky if you're not reading it precisely, and also that you need to be aware of enzyme activity, which we will come on to next week. So this one gives optimum pH condition for protease enzyme to work. All right, moving on. It says here, draw one line from each digestive enzyme to the correct breakdown product. So amylase breaks down starch to sugars. You should have that. Lipase breaks down fats into fatty acid and glycerol. Protease breaks down proteins into amino acids. So you should have that there. Okay, so just look back over the marks I've put here and correct or amend your work accordingly. Question. I want you to answer the question back on the Teams channel. So once you get to this question, I want you to write in the Teams channel what the answer to A is and B, and then move on to the second part of the question. And for the question where it says what is the function of the nucleus, I want you to type back, put A I, and I want you to type back the correct answer. So take a look at this question here, and I want you to type back the correct answer in the Teams channel.